Hello, everyone. Last session of the afternoon, so thanks a lot for coming. I'm Ellen, and this is Elena. And today we're going to be talking, it's going to be a pretty high-level talk. We're going to be talking about how some wearable technologies reduce usability frictions and barriers. But first, I want to say that this is my first time at an accessibility-centered event. And it's been really, really humbling, really eye-opening, and I've learned a ton. Another speaker, Sean, said that we all have different areas of expertise, and we also have different areas of ignorance. And today, that's really resonated with me. So while I'm talking, if you have any thoughts, feel free to chime in. This casual format is what this is about. I actually didn't prepare many slides. I was on the fence about whether or not to even have slides in the first place, but I decided this is better than a blue screen. So a little bit about me. I'm Ellen. I'm a user experience designer at a Toronto-based startup called Nimmy. I'll talk more about Nimmy in a little bit, but before joining Nimmy, I was a freelance product designer. I worked at the Hospital for Sick Children, creating computer simulations of different diseases, and this was to help pharmacologists design better medicine. But whether it's wearable tech or consumer tech or research tech, working in technology is really exciting to me because at its best, technology enables all of us to be more capable, just better versions of ourselves. And I'll share a few examples I like. Fitness tracking wristbands, they are becoming more and more popular these days, like the Fitbit or the Apple Watch, and they encourage people to have active lifestyles by giving you personalized, tailored notifications, by showing you some insights into your physical activity that you might not otherwise have. Video calling apps like Skype or Hangouts allow you to have conversations with people regardless of how far away they are, and it's a very, very dynamic and human experience. Another really popular one is word processors. From Google Docs to Microsoft Word to Pages, they let you do away with the pen and paper so you can just focus on getting your thoughts down. At least that's what the vision is for these sorts of products. To some extent, they've done a good job, but very rarely do they get it right at first. And as someone who's in the wearable space, a new space, a space that's really trying to figure things out as we go, those initial hurdles in the beginning as we're figuring things out is something that I want to talk about with you all today. So in 2006, Microsoft did a survey with some of their users about what sorts of features they would like to see in upcoming versions of Microsoft Word. And this is my favorite user experience related statistic, and I love quoting this statistic. 80% of the features requested were features that already existed. So Microsoft was asking people, what do you want to see in future Microsoft Word? And they were saying things like, I want to be able to customize the tables. I want to be able to export to a web format. I want to do this and that. But those features and functionalities were already there. They were just buried in menus, buried in drop-downs, buried in tabs, and it was all very inaccessible. That's what made it unusable. And so you look at a piece of really powerful software like Microsoft Word and you think, is that powerful? Is it powerful if the features aren't accessible? Is it powerful if people aren't harnessing that power? And the answer is no. So even though it could do a lot of things, if those things aren't actually usable, then what good is it? What problem is it solving for people? And so the sentiment here, and it translates into wearables, it translates into any sort of technology, it's what problem is the technology solving for the people if the technology isn't accessible to people? And when it comes to making solutions, creating solutions, we shouldn't be asking ourselves, can it be built? Because now, more and more, the answer is yes. if we want to build something, it can be built. Now the question is, who are we building it for? How well do we understand their needs? How can we shape it to cater to those needs? And we have to make sure we're always talking to those people to make sure that we are on track to meeting those needs. So that brings me to wearable technology. Oh, by the way, after Microsoft had done this survey and learned that most of their features were not accessible, they introduced the ribbon, which is now in current version of Microsoft Office. So the ribbons got bigger icons, more user-friendly verbiage, all of which is to improve usability. So with wearable technology, I mentioned earlier it's a very new space. How many people here are familiar with wearables? Cool. How many here own a wearable device? Cool. I'm wearing one right now, and I'll be demoing it in a bit. So these are products that you wear that can learn about your behavior and extend the sorts of things that you can do depending on what type of wearable it is. There are fitness tracking wearables, health monitoring wearables, things to help you keep track of calories and other things. There's a huge variety of different wearables, and myself and Elena will just be talking about 2 today. But the interesting thing about wearables is because it's so new, there's no well-defined best practices. There's no there's so many different form factors. There are so many different sorts of interactions. You may have a wristband, and so you could say that a wristband deserves to have the same interface as a watch, but that may not be the case. You may have a headband. Does a headband deserve to have the same sort of interface as a running headband? There's no feed, there's no input there. So how do you turn these new sorts of form factors into things that people can intuitively interact with? So people in the wearable space, a lot of us are figuring things out as we go. And there's a lot of potential, though. So to harness that potential, we try our best to reach out to people and learn about their needs. So myself and Elena, we're here today. We want to hear what you have to say about the products we're going to be talking about, and we want to hear your perspectives. So now I'll be talking about the Nimmy Band. I mentioned earlier that it's a Toronto-based startup, and what we are seeking to do is tackle what we call the inconvenient identity problem. Has anyone here heard of Nimmy in the past? NYMI. It's the inconvenient identity problem is one that is a pervasive friction across all sorts of technology. So it's every time I would need to prove my identity, there is this wall. I'll give a few examples. When I am going home, I have to take out my keys. My intent is to enter my home, but in order to achieve that, I have to take out my key, put it in, maybe fumble with it a little bit, I drop it, I pick it up, I put it back in, maybe I get the wrong key, so I find the second key, I stick it in, finally the door opens, and I'm in my home. My objective there was to get home. Never is my objective to unlock a door. I'm never interested in unlocking doors. It just so happens to be an inherent friction in getting home. Another example would be buying lunch. So I'm really hungry. I'm going to Burger King and I want to buy a burger. So now I have to take out my credit card and make a payment. I try to do tap and pay, but the cashier is like, oh, sorry, we don't accept tap. So now I have to stick my credit card into the chip reader and enter my PIN. And meanwhile, all I really want is my food. So there, again, my intent is to obtain food and eat food. I'm not interested in entering PINs. I'll give one last example, going to work. No, actually, passwords. Passwords is a great example. It's a terrible example, which is why it's a great example. Sometimes at work, you're forced to change your password for security reasons. The IT system says your password needs to be a minimum of 16 characters with uppercase, lowercase, alphanumerical characters, and a special character like a hash or an asterisk or something, as if you can remember a 16-character password that long. And lots of large organizations especially, they're going to ask you to do this repeatedly. Every few months, they're going to ask you to change your password, and every few months, you're going to forget your password. You'll have to go to the IT guy. The IT guy will be like, oh, Ellen, you're here again to reset your password. I've been through this. And it's another terrible friction that you go through on a regular basis, right? Ultimately, what you want to do is get to your computer so you can do your work. But instead, this first wall that you're hitting is just entering this password. You enter passwords to log into your computer. You enter passwords to access your email. You enter passwords to do online banking. But all you really want to do is access your computer, read your emails, check on your bank statements. You're not interested in the actual passwords. So as a user experience designer and as a human being that has limited memory span, limited attention span, and limited patience, I think a lot about how to make these sorts of experiences easier, not just for myself, but for everyone else. It would be a dream if I could come home and just go into my home without having to fumble with a key, without having to, stand in the rain while things are dropping onto the floor. It would be a dream if I could go to my computer, sit down, and I don't need to enter a password, it's just open for me because it knows that it's me. It would be great if I can access my email without having to go through this password thing again and again. But oftentimes, what happens when you have convenient experiences is you have to pay with less security. So I could go home and not have to fumble with the door. All I have to do is have no door. Or I could keep my door unlocked. So in that way, I could have a very convenient going home experience, but there's no security there whatsoever. Similarly, with my laptop, I could not have a password, but then my files, my information on my laptop remain accessible to anybody who happens to have my laptop. So there's this battle here between convenience and security, and that is the inconvenient identity problem. That is the problem that Nimmy is out to tackle. So how do we have the convenience of seamless interaction with our world while also maintaining security? And one answer, one possible solution, would be the Nimmy Band. So the Nimmy Band is a wristband. I'm wearing it right here. Oh, sorry. I forgot that I had slides. But here I'm illustrating all the examples of points of proof of identity and how it happens throughout the day. If we can centralize it all so that it happens once, and then for the rest of the day, you don't have to prove who you are anymore, that would be a great solution. So the Nimmy Band is a wristband. It has 2 electrodes that read your ECG. Your ECG is an electrical signal produced by your heart. Everyone's ECG is unique. It's a unique biometric similar to your fingerprint, similar to the way your fingerprint is, similar to the way your iris is. And once the Nimmy Band recognizes you biometrically, it can then authenticate you on your behalf to everything else. So I wake up in the morning, I put on my Nimmy Band, it recognizes me biometrically, and then later on when I go to my computer, via Bluetooth, my computer detects my Nimmy Band, and then it just logs in for me. I don't have to enter my password. I go to Burger King to get that lunch I wanted. instead of fumbling with my credit card, I can make a payment with my Nimmy Band via NFC, the same way a credit card might. When I'm going to work, instead of taking my key fob and fumbling with it there, again, I can just walk towards the door, and by proximity detection, the door will be unlocked for me by the time I have my hand on the handle. And so there's both security and convenience here. The security comes from the Nimmy Band hardware biometrically recognizing me. All I need is to have my heartbeat, and everyone's got a heartbeat. And then it's also got the convenience. So once it recognizes me first thing in the morning, from then on, I don't have to think about entering passwords, pulling out a key, or doing any proof of identity anymore. So I've given a few small examples of what the Nimmy Band seeks to do, but what it really, the vision here is that by putting the identity problem centralized into a wristband, the world opens up to you. So I can enter a restaurant that I go to a lot. If they have a Nimmy Band receiver, they may be able to detect that Ellen has arrived at Burger King. I never go to Burger King, but let's say I'm a frequent visitor and I have a regular order. So by the time I physically enter the building, if I'm a frequent customer and they know that I always order the same thing, they can have my order prepared for me by the time I'm about to go place my order. If I am going to a hotel and I am a mother of 2 kids, I've got a partner, so we've got a family of 4. And every time we travel in 4. I arrive at Continental Hotel, I go to the front desk, and already they may have a good understanding already of what my expectations are, what my needs are as a customer or as a user of their service. And so while we are solving an identity authentication problem, there's a lot of potential for this in the personalized experiences in digital and physical spaces. Currently, Nimmy has partnered up with several large institutions like banks. We've partnered with RBC, TD, MasterCard, and we're currently doing some payment pilots, and they're going really well. Today, I want to demonstrate how the Nimmy Band works, so I'll just go ahead and do that now. So when I put it on, the first thing I have to do is have it biometrically recognize me. So when you first get the Nimmy Band in the box, you take it out, you have to register, so you record some of your ECG. And then in the future, subsequent times you wear the Nimmy Band, you are matching your ECG of the current time to the ECG when you registered in the beginning. So I'll just, one second. I've been fiddling with this all day. Are there any questions? I will be handing it off to Elena to talk a little bit more too. No worries. Yep, I saw a question.
What about the customers that would have like heart conditions with irregular heartbeats or stuff? If their heart condition changes or whatever, will it adapt to that?
That's a really good question. So the Nimmy Band, the ECG that we read is the electrical signal produced by your heart. And so there are always going to be peaks and valleys. Sometimes they will be greater in frequency, but the shape will be the same, sometimes stretched wider, sometimes compressed. And so for the most part, even people with irregular heartbeats or heart rhythms, the shape of their ECG is retained. Now, if someone's got a really, if their ECG is also irregular, we do have other ways to authenticate to the band. You don't have to use your heart, you don't have to use the ECG. You can also use Touch ID on an iPhone, or you can use a password also through a phone app. So the phone app that we have is always available as a backup option. This is the app that the user originally uses to set up or register their ECG in the beginning. For the most part, it's intended for just the setup process, but it's also available for if the ECG option doesn't work out. Yeah. So the Nimmy Band now recognizes that I am Ellen. So what I can do with it now is unlock my computer with it. Okay, so I'm gonna now lock my computer. When the computer's locked, the screen goes off. So I'm just gonna show you like this. So this is my Mac's login screen. This is so tiny, I'm sorry. I'll walk and show you. I'll come closer. So this is the login screen. Typically, I have to enter my password, but if my Nimmy Band is nearby and it's biometrically recognized me, I can just hit enter and it'll log me in. Now I can unclasp my Nimmy Band. The cool thing about this is when the band is taken off, if someone rips it off your wrist or when you take it off before you go to sleep, it no longer recognizes you. It forgets the owner, it forgets all the services that you've authorized until you put it on again and match the ECG in the morning. So I'm gonna now lock my computer again. So I've taken it off. I press enter. It won't let me in. I'll press enter again. It won't let me in. Now, I'll put it on. I haven't had it detect my ECG yet. In order for it to read my ECG, I have to put another finger on top of the top electrode. That way, it can read the electrical signal produced by my heart. It's got two sensors, and it has to have skin contact on both the top and bottom sensors. So it hasn't yet read my ECG. So it doesn't yet recognize me. And still, I won't be able to log in. Now, finally, once it reads my ECG, I usually do this sitting down.
Is the band waterproof?
It is waterproof. So you can go swimming with it, you can shower with it.
Where can I get it?
Oh, that's a great question. So currently, we are only doing pilots with large organizations just to test the workplace setting, like unlocking computers, accessing physical spaces. But next year we'll be making it available for consumer purchasing. Just now, the Nimmy Band had read my ECG, and now it'll log me in. So I don't know if you all saw that, but basically, it was only after I put it on, it was able to biometrically recognize me. Only then did it let me into my computer. So similarly to making payments or entering your home or entering your workplace, that's the sort of seamless experience we're aiming for. Yeah, question?
So my assumption is that you have software on your computer.
Yeah.
I guess my question is more oriented into confirming when it's confirmed that the actual
Yep.
Band,
Nimmy Band.
yeah, is connected with your computer. There's some sort of communication that's visual on the computer to make that
When there's a what, sorry?
Sorry, when you're doing the login, so you did the
Oh.
example where you take it off, reattach the band, and then someone tries to log in, it just doesn't log in. Is there a mechanism where there's an error that says your Nimmy Band is not initialized? Please check for that or put in your password. Can you modify that sort of error handling within the login screens? And I guess the other question, I guess there must be support for Windows as well.
For what?
Windows?
Yes. So second question, yes, we support Windows. As for your first question about error handling, that's a great question. There, we are tackling a troubleshooting problem, but also a security problem. Because if we made that error case known, I can take off my Nimmy Band, wear it, but not biometrically have it recognize me yet. And then a malicious colleague, for example, may be close by and wants to access my computer. When they try hitting enter, if they receive an informative enough error message that tells them some state of my Nimmy Band, they may be able to, say, fine-tune thresholds by which they can overcome a security measure. So currently, the way that the computer finds the Nimmy Band is by proximity. So if we were to say something like, bring your Nimmy Band closer, that would give a malicious user some information about the radius, the effective radius. So these are all things that we can communicate, but it's a fine line between what sort of things can we communicate and be effective without possibly being taken advantage of by an adversarial party.
I agree. The question comes also from, so my background is more about accessibility. So often we have to be, the security measure, I agree that making the notification there that it's obvious that the Nimmy Band is associated with the program can be a problem. But I think there's also the other side where if it's perhaps a user with slight cognitive issues, that just needs a reminder that they have to initialize it, and it could be sitting there. And I know that sounds silly, but I've done it with other
Not at
things,
all, yeah.
where it's like they forget to reinitialize and they sit there looking at it for a few minutes and be like, why isn't this thing that I just spent all this money not working again? So there needs to be some sort of confirmation, whether it's vague or not. And I understand the security measures, but I really feel that especially from looking at the guidelines that I work on a regular basis,
Yep.
some sort of feedback, whether vague or not, needs to be there to at least associate with the user.
100%. I agree. So the feedback that we do provide is on the band.
Okay, so how does that?
What happens is when someone is trying to log into your computer and there is some communication happening between the band and another device, there's a vibration.
Okay.
So if you are in front of your computer and you're about to log in and you feel the vibration, you're like, great, it's working as I expect.
Okay.
Similar to how when you're making a payment, there's like a beep, you expect that beep to be coming.
Yeah.
But if you're like you're off somewhere else and you feel a vibration on your wrist, you're like, what's up? Why did that just happen? And then you're able to pinpoint like what exactly is triggering the vibration. So that's if someone else is trying to use your device. Now, if you are trying to use your device but you haven't yet initialized your band, the band also sends you reminders to do the authentication step. Because then is the band useful to you? Otherwise, it's like in a deactive state and is just an accessory. So it does send those reminders to the user, but we try to keep those sorts of notifications localized to the person's body, because when it's on another device, like a laptop or a phone, that can be accessed by another person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
to get further, in a bad situation, right? Let's say somebody wants to rob the bank.
Let's say, sorry?
Like if somebody wants to rob the bank or they knock someone out,
Uh-huh.
we would know that you're not conscious and that, you know what I mean? Like you're saying that, oh, the car is to the bank beyond somebody and who's going to proceed with this control.
So
So where does they go?
if something as terrible as you got beat up so that someone could take your Nimmy Band happened, that would still not be enough, because what you need is the heartbeat. So if someone were to cut my arm off, let's use the worst situation. They cut my arm off, they take my Nimmy Band, they have my arm, but there's no heartbeat there. Oh. Well, in that case, I mean, to that I say, if someone's beating you up so that they can get access of your stuff, they will get access regardless of whether or not you have a Nimmy Band or not. Like, if I have keys in my pocket and someone kidnapped me to access my keys, they will have access to my home. So that's not the use case that we are trying to solve, but it's a tricky one. The world is a dangerous place.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about computers specifically, right? Like, accessing your home is one thing, but then the second level is what's on your computer, right? If it's secure,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's fair. Some of the research that I've seen is that for people with mobility issues, this is a really good solution.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if someone takes essentially if you're in a wheelchair and someone takes your wheelchair and pushes you towards your banking information, and they can just access there because you've already initialized somewhere, that could be something that's concerning, but I imagine it's something you guys will look into.
Yeah, that's very tricky.
I'd like to know, based on the conversation that we're having, there are applications for Windows, there's applications for Apple devices. And what I want to know as a consumer is what extent you are going to make sure that these applications are fully accessible to those of us who are visually impaired or otherwise, since disabilities should be all disabilities, to ensure that we can use this product on any device, anywhere we want.
That's a great question. Granted, so this is the first accessibility event that I've ever been to. And so I have learned a ton. I've also learned that I need to tell more people from my organization to come to events like these, because, you know, from every single talk that I've been to, I have learned so much, because to be totally honest, I haven't been thinking about accessibility as much as I should be. And so right now, I don't know. That's something that has to change for me as a professional, as a designer, but also that's something I need to bring back to the Nimmy team to get us all thinking about how we can improve accessibility in the software and the hardware that we have. Because our hardware, it doesn't have a screen, but it's got lights and it's got vibrations. So how can we use that haptic feedback to be valuable for both people with accessibility concerns and others? How can it be equally intuitive for everybody? So that's something we need to look into a lot more.
Well, I might be the only one, but there is a market there for it.
Of course.
You're not the only one.
I mean, this event just goes to show that you are definitely not the only one. And solving problems for people with accessibility concerns only serves to help everybody. And so we got to be thinking about everybody. There's a great, the CEO of MasterCard once said that we are building the internet of everything, but we need the inclusion of everyone. And so the only way we can really achieve that is by thinking about everybody, including those with accessibility concerns. There was a question over here. David?
Same question as Gary.
Okay.
Yeah,
May have some
how
suggestions.
much would this, how much would that be going on the web, or do you have an idea of what?
Around $100.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
So cost of Terry.
No, cost is a huge concern. So if there aren't any other questions, I'll hand the stage to Elena, who will be talking about another wearable device, Mile.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so I'll be much faster because two reasons for why. the device is stuck in the mail, so it's not here, so I cannot demo it, unfortunately. And the reason too is my angle to it is not as technical as I would have liked. I am a marketer, and so this is my lens on the world, and I'm interested very much in the accessibility crowd, because my theory as a marketer is that if I make it accessible, then more people will understand whatever it is I'm saying, whatever it is, whatever my message is, or whatever the product I'm selling. And so I have a client, I work with startups primarily, and I work with technology companies, and my client called Mile is a device that you would wear very much in a similar way of wear a mic right now, because it's using your voice to activate apps on your behalf. And instead of you reaching out for a phone, like I have in my pocket, or will have in a second. Thank you. So I have a phone in my pocket, and what I would normally do if I'm using apps, I would take it out, remember my password, so there we go again, and open up the app, and it might ask me for a password again, and then go and perform whatever function I will perform, whatever it is I'm doing. Maybe it's counting calories, maybe it's keeping track of my budget, maybe I'm filing a report because I did some work somewhere, and maybe I'm using Salesforce, and it's just becoming really hard to just keep doing this again. It cannot continue. And so I'm interested in your feedback primarily, because this product is in a beta state. It just did an Indiegogo campaign, so it raised some money, and now they're starting to develop the actual hardware and trying to get a feedback on the idea of voice to app. So it's voice to text, because it turns your voice into text, and through text it communicates with the apps on your behalf, and you can send messages that way, you can tweet that way. It's sort of like Siri, only you're not talking to your phone, and it's an open source system. So it's got open API SDK, and you can potentially build stuff for it.
How does it recognize, does it have built-in voice, your voice, does it actually recognize that it is in fact you talking?
Good question. It does not right now. And that's a really, really valuable feedback I'll take back to the team. It's sort of assuming, just like with the key example that Ellen talked about, that if you have the device, that you are you. And there is a certain setup you do in the beginning where you choose which apps you prefer to do what tasks with, because you can count calories with 100 apps, but maybe there is just the one app you use the most and the one you like, which is the case for most of us. So most of us have a preferred go-to running app and calorie app and whatever. Or maybe there is a one that I need to use for work, which would be common to everyone in that work scenario. But I'm curious if that's something you would find useful, and what other potential concerns you might have about something like that, where it's small, it's black right now, and it activates on a tap. So yes.
So this product, I think I've seen it before. It's I think it was marketed as a personal assistant. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what sounds like the product does is that you can define a few applications, and I'm relatively familiar with Siri. So you say open even notes, for instance, then dictate to the notes what you want to note, and then you say create new notes, and then create another one. Get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying that pretty much the gap that it would fill is the ability to interact with your mobile device in a manner that you might, I don't know if you're familiar with Dragon, where you could interact with your device as you would with Dragon with your computer. You can open applications and then actually dictate to them, which is, in my opinion, a barrier with the current functionalities of the phones and their capabilities that they say are there but aren't really.
Mm-hmm.
So that's accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to promote, because it would definitely fill a gap that's not there before.
Interesting.
Because the problem with the current systems is that although Siri can in fact do a lot of things, basically, well, I guess with iOS 9 it's a little different, but it's still true. At the end of the day, you still really have to have a connection to the internet. And so that means people have to use their own personal data. They may not want to. They may be underground in a subway where there's no connection at all except in downtown Toronto with the right provider. But the point being that I think a device like this has a potential market for those times when, especially when people can't interact with an online service.
Hey Terry, is it, does it interact through wireless or is it Bluetooth or?
Yeah, it's Bluetooth.
It's with wireless?
Wireless Bluetooth, yeah.
Wireless Bluetooth. Okay.
Yeah.
So it can be done when it's not, or used when it's not, when you're not in an internet connection.
Yeah, yeah.
That's phenomenal. Especially because I use my hands sometimes, so typing can be a huge issue. And so when the capabilities of the devices fail me, I find it actually quite frustrating. I just don't do it. It's not.
Interesting. So when you type, do you, because right now the way device works, it responds to short messages, so I think it's got a limit of 30 seconds or so, and after which it assumes you're doing something else, a new task, because it's, the way it's been marketed isn't necessarily, I'm not going to speak to that because that wasn't me, but it's came out from a founder's personal frustration who has a bit of an ADHD of interacting with his device and so many sites and so many apps. And he's also a quantified self-enthusiast because he personally just wants to improve his condition and work better. And so he was trying to use that phone for that, and it was giving him a hard time because it's you can't cure ADHD with more ADHD, you know. And so, if you were to imagine any potential barriers or anything that would excite you that it could do, I would love to hear any feedback ideas. Just because the device itself is so early in its development, that's really why I'm here, is to sort of get that feedback early on. Okay, so if you think of something later, I could give you my email. Maybe you could email me. I'm Elena, ELENA, @communicable.ca. Communicable.ca. Thank you very much. Yeah, there it is. Or, you know, @communicable on Twitter if you use Twitter. And I would love to hear your feedback and thoughts. Thank you.